Hey guys, Aussie Expat here. I'm going to be talking to you about the certified pre-owned program coming out from Rolex. Okay, I really didn't want to make this video. I really didn't. There's a lot of people who jump onto this sort of news story, and I thought they would have covered it well, but I'm just seeing like completely wild, just garbage information coming out about this certified pre-owned. Now, clearly I'm not talking about the actual facts of the pre-owned thing, like it comes with a tag or something like that, but its effects on the market and the experience at the ADs. Look, the reality is a lot of YouTubers out there don't actually have a relationship with an AD that does pre-owned, or any relationship with an AD at all, or any interaction with buying Rolexes, right? Like, I see a few people who don't have any Rolexes and they're talking about sort of certified pre-owned program, or they've got no modern Rolex, so they don't know what the AD experience actually is like. Look, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a YouTube channel on watches. If you don't, I'm just saying like this is something very specific about ADs, and you're commenting as if pre-owned is not a thing currently. So as someone who does get watches from an AD that does pre-owned, a lot of these questions don't make any sense. So what are some frequently asked questions? Like one was like, oh, that's going to be weird. You're going to go into a store and the new stuff is, 13,000 or 14,000 for a Daytona, but you go over here in the case, it's like 35,000. What's up with that? This happens today. There's already pre-owned programs. So Booker and Tourneau and a lot of other ADs already have pre-owned watches available, and it's not a new thing. Now, it is still a reasonable question, like what's the customer experience like for such a thing where the pre-owned's higher than the retail, but it's not a hypothetical. They deal with that every day. And in reality, the harder question that happens like 400 times a day is, what do you tell the person who says, oh, I want a Pepsi, oh, I want a Submariner, I want a Daytona? That's complicated. The fact that the pre-owned is sitting there at a higher price helps answer those questions. So it's not a hypothetical. They deal with this on a daily basis. The fact that you can buy pre-owned for a big markup, or you don't. So what happens with other aspects of the AD relationship? And people like, well, this sounds like Ferrari, where you buy a pre-owned Ferrari and then you'll be allowed to buy a new one. I was like, yeah, that's exactly it. So if you go into one of these stores today and buy one of their pre-owned models, that's seen as a very lucrative purchase for them, and I'd be surprised if that doesn't establish a very healthy relationship, including one that starts getting you access to new Rolexes. So that's exactly the way it is. And it also means that you could trade them in. And I've heard, but it's not so much happening with, say, Tourneau or Booker, that it can give rise to some sort of wacky deals. Like, for example, if you own a Pepsi, GMT Master 2, I've heard of a situation where someone said, I'm thinking of trading this in and they're going to give me like $10,000, like basically MSRP, somewhere around that range. And you'd be crazy to sell your Pepsi for MSRP. It's like, yeah, actually, but they will sell me a new Panda Daytona at retail if I trade in my Pepsi. So that ends up in a sort of a win-win situation for both the person and the AD. That person paid MSRP for their Pepsi. They'll trade it in and then pay, $4,000 more to get a new Daytona, brand new, MSRP. And so that works out from their perspective, as well as, but if anyone was looking at it, I was like, why would you trade in your Pepsi at Grey? Well, at Grey, they might get like $15,000, $18,000 for it, and then they'd have to buy a $33,000 Daytona that wouldn't be new, it would be pre-owned. So it works out for the dealer. They get inventory at a much lower cost for the Pepsi. They sell someone they may have sold anyway, the Daytona at some point. And then the person gets to trade in their watch and then also get the Daytona, so they're not out of pocket much. So there are weird deals that can come in to the AD because they're mixing new pricing and pre-owned pricing and so forth, and it's legit. There's nothing about that situation that's legit, but it's sort of like an opportunity that works for both the customer and the AD. The flip side would be sort of like the accusations around potentially taking new stock and just putting in the pre-owned cabinet, right? As best as I can tell, that doesn't happen, at least at the ADs that I've seen. But, you know, that's a reasonable accusation. I'm sure Rolex are on top of it. It's not really for you to police, but it happens today. The certified pre-owned program isn't going to help that. In fact, certified pre-owned, they say they're not going to certify anything less than 3 years. The other aspect is like, what does this do for the whole market as a whole? It's like, well, Bucherer, Tourneau, these ADs that also have pre-owned, they tend to be at the very top of the market with inventory that isn't actually the top of the market. So in my experience, I've seen most of the inventory at Bucherer is mostly naked watches, which in the grey market scheme of things are sort of bottom of the barrel in terms of desirability for a modern watch, even if the condition is okay. You know, I'm not saying it's worthless. I'm just saying it wouldn't command the premium that they would be asking. Certainly the 10 or 20% premium above, say, even David SW price is what you typically see on Bucherer. And they already come with Bucherer's own sort of vetting, you know what I mean? One of the things in the pre-owned market that does happen is like someone says, I want to sell a naked watch. You know, they've lost the box and papers. What can I do about it? Well, one of the things to make it a little bit more liquid is to send it into RSC for a service. And that means they've already said that basically this isn't a stolen watch, or at least isn't in their stolen watch register, and it's serviced, it's good, it's authentic. They won't service a fake watch, right? So the recent service gives you a 2-year warranty and gives you papers to show that it's an authentic watch. That's what the CPO is. The CPO only means that the watch went to RSC, they give it the same 2-year warranty, it gets a hang tag because it came from an AD for the purposes of selling. So it's very clear that there isn't really much difference here. I think what was always there was basically the ability to rescue a naked watch's liquidity and authenticity using RSC as a middleman, and that's still going to be the case. Now, I think also people misunderstand like maybe how these watches are going to come into inventory and come out of inventory. I would suggest that this is really up to the AD. This isn't about Rolex dictating you now sell pre-owned stuff and Rolex is going to set prices. I think this is just still going to come down to the AD. Shops that already do this stuff will be interested, and shops that don't do it probably won't be more interested. Maybe it'll help them a little bit, but they still have to get the acumen for like grey pricing and wheeling and dealing. So I'm not sure if there's an AD that today doesn't do pre-owned would now be like, oh, let's do pre-owned because Rolex are rubber stamping, you know, authenticity. The AD would still be in a position, if they didn't do their own vetting when taking inventory, they take in something that's crap, that's fake, that's a Frankenwatch or something like that. RSC isn't going to make that deal good. So it's going to be up to the AD to source their own inventory and then decide whether or not they sell it out of the case as is, or they send it into RSC to get that rubber stamp that they would provide. I suggest that this came about more from Bucherer asking Rolex to do this program as opposed to the other way around. I suggest that there were certain watches that were going to RSC anyway, and Bucherer said it would be nice if you like put a different tag on it rather than a service tag, and that way it tells customers who aren't that aware exactly what an RSC service means and doesn't mean. And so the CPO tag sort of like, oh, okay, I kind of understand what that means. Basically, Rolex will rubber stamp this as being an authentic watch, which is what an RSC service would do anyway. So overall, there aren't many hypotheticals to this situation, right? There aren't many hypotheticals. It does rescue some naked watches' value, but we are talking about adding value to a minor amount of inventory, the inventory that sits at ADs already today, adding a little bit more value there and not much more. And it's more of a value of communication, because if they're not going to send all their inventory to RSC to get serviced and get the 2-year warranty and the tag, that means having the watch out of stock for like months on end. So you could imagine they want turnover. They don't want to guarantee that the watch is out of commission for many months. So they're only going to send the watches to RSC that they think already need that kind of service to be able to get back out the door. So there are no real hypotheticals to this. This isn't going to crush the grey dealer market. This is just another rubber stamp that will be slightly different to the other rubber stamp that they were providing before, which is an RSC service tag, service receipt, that sort of thing. So these aren't new watches that new inventory of watches, pre-owned, that you'll be able to acquire and it's more attractive. This is stuff that you walk into a Torno or Booker and you can take a look at these watches today. They won't be any different. Just find ones that happen to have been serviced recently by RSC. That's basically your CPO stock. So I hope that clarifies things. So there are no real hypotheticals to the situation. It already occurs today. RSC service is basically the only thing that is happening here, and it's just coming with a hang tag because AD sent it in instead of a regular person. But if you know what you're looking for, a person who's serviced the watch recently, it's basically the same thing as CPO. And the prices are going to be astronomical. They probably will be higher priced than they otherwise would be, but that's because they've also just had a service, which is the same is true in like the private or grey market, where if the person's bothered to put it in through RSC service first, you have some new reassurances about authenticity, legitimacy, as well as its service aspect, as in, is the watch working and good to go. So there aren't really any hypotheticals here. This isn't a game changer. This is just a way of helping Rolex communicate that a recent service does represent a certain type of a rubber stamp. That means it's probably better to buy this than one that doesn't have it, but certainly not a qualification that anyone should say must occur. I mean, Booker and Torno are not buying watches they don't speculatively might turn out to be good when they send it into RSC. They already should know 100% whether or not the watch is good. And for them, it's probably returning customers who've, they bought the watch off Booker or Torno in many cases. So, they know the history of the watch. So they're not really in a position where they say, this is how we vet fakes. It would take too long to do that. All right, that's that. Hope there's no more questions, but if there's more questions, put them down below. Please like and subscribe, and see you next time.